Let's dialogue, my man.
Okay, let's this is Agent of Secret Radio, an intimate transmission for your ears only. I am pleasure to talk to Griz, General Griz, and I really enjoyed his talk with Vervaeke. He was fantastic, and I've been a fan of his for a little while. And his work on the Broken Clock Tower. We're going to talk about what is a system. What do people mean when they say the system is broken, and is there a system? So, Grim, how do you feel about the system?
My emotional relationship with the system.
Is there
Which
this system?
layer? Which layer?
Hmm.
There's a it's reality is a fractal, as far as I can tell, and there's system at every layer. Um, that's just like I guess I feel that the system is fractal, and the system is encompassing all reality. But like when people talk about the system, they might be talking about the education system or the labor market or the like systems manage different things.
Hmm. Yeah. So I was thinking like networks, like you have like numerous networks interconnected, right?
Hmm.
And then the thing that I fear is that some people want to think they can fix the system or they'll end up destroying it or something, or like the system can unravel. Do you think that's possible?
Hmm. The human created systems, Towers of Babel, yes. Yes.
Oh,
The system? No. The system's fine.
that's fascinating that you use the Tower of Babel. I was talking with Manuel Post, and he was talking about like in relation to the system, and he said something about above the natural. So,
Hmm. Okay.
and wanting to create a system like almost like a system that's above the natural, that reminds me of the Tower of Babel. So, this is going to be a very interesting conversation with both of us, I think. So, yeah, so you think the system will be fine? It's interesting. Like
No, I think
Vervaeke,
it's functioning fine, humming along. It like parts of that may be real bumpy for us, but
yes, it's very interesting.
creation is not flawed. Or all flaws in creation are there by design. Uh,
That's really good. You know, it's interesting that in a funny way, you kind of resonate with Mark because he was talking about the nature of fractal. And I was thinking of like fractal in the relationship of Neoplatonism. They have this thing of the macrocosm and the microcosm, and how within the microcosm reflects the macrocosm and vice versa.
I have an interject.
Okay.
There was I existed on a digital place called Google Plus once upon a time, and whilst there, a news article came out and was shared about how some like 19 or 21-year old young lady scientist had proven that the universe is not a fractal. And that headline confirmed to me that the universe is definitely a fractal.
Oh, wow. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Because my view of the system is such that we've entered an era where the priests wear lab coats, and for them, and I think, and it part of their authority is to make profound statements about the nature of the universe, even though they claim 70% of it is a dark matter they can't figure out. And so when they do big public rituals, like because it was so, oh look, it's a young lady scientist, like we've been pushing for, and look at us holding her up high, and she's saying this thing we want her to say, and so because the motives seem maladaptive, I don't
Hmm.
trust the information, and
Hmm.
that's where. But having a view of the system like that is you end up where I'm at. So be careful what views you take of the system, you know.
This is true. This is true. I feel the same way. Um, hmm. We should have took a role for managing anxiety. Let's see. So I was
That's
thinking
you
that
just breathe, man. Watch.
so I was thinking that systems are emergent. Like, okay, like I work in a hospital, right? And in
Right?
this hospital, you have all these parts that fit together. Like you have a lab, you have things. I was thinking, like, you could think that one person designed it, but multiple people must have designed it. And in a sense, there were older hospitals that kind of got added to it and parts got added to in sections. So in a sense, it was an emergent phenomenon designed by many people. But I was talking to Manuel, I was thinking, like, some people think the system is controlled by a small cabal of people or something.
Well, if we're going on what some people think, my speculation would be the Pharaoh still runs things.
Mm,
So
that's really interesting.
there's what's it called? It doesn't matter what their names are. I think that if me and my friends were all rich and powerful, we would conspire. So to assume that the rich and powerful don't conspire seems fairly ignorant. And but there's also the things that the rich and powerful do are so counterintuitive that it seems like they must be getting their power and whatever from someplace higher than them. And
Mm,
so it's probably the Pharaoh. Because I think with the middle management the way it is, and with the invention of middle management in Exodus, it makes sense. It's still the Pharaoh.
that's fascinating. Yes. Huh. You know, when you spoke of the priests, the word Pharisees came to mind in a sense. Does that map for you?
Priests and Pharisees. Pharisees is
Loaded
uh
term.
no, it's just it's uh ephemeral.
Hmm.
Like my definition of it is not. It's basically in D&D terms, it's like lawful evil priests. Like they follow the law very strictly for their own selfish gain. So that's that's what my mind groks as Pharisee. And that might not at all be what the definition of it is. So that's what I mean.
Hmm. That's fascinating.
But did you combine priests and Pharisees makes that basically, yeah.
What would shamans be alignment wise?
You can have anybody can any class can be any alignment usually, except like with paladins to be it's either lawful good or chaotic evil. There's not the full range, but with everything else, you know, you can have like the line between good and evil runs through the hearts, and so you'll find like the reason D&D is getting a hard time at the moment is because like why orc society? You're just hate you're bigots against the orcs. It's so wrong. And it's I don't know, like that to me. Like
Hmm.
the evil, it's yeah, it's not at that layer. The good and evil part's not at the layer of function, societal function. Everybody can be good. Everybody can you can find good people in any role and bad people in any role.
Yeah. I was thinking about how that maps out to networks, right? Like every network is going to be in like I was thinking about, I'm just gonna kind of ramble for a sec. I was thinking about a system, right? And you have these networks and they're based about hubs, right? And then you have people that are not that are loosely connected to networks, but they're able to link different networks together. In order for a network, for an individual part of the system to function, a network, you have to have people that inherently wholly are true believers of that system. But then within those systems, you're gonna have people that are kind of like varying degrees of belief or whatever, and then some that are kind of yeah. In order for the system to integrate, you're gonna have people that are able to communicate across networks. And I was thinking about this in the relationship to like disciplines of like science or whatever. It's almost like we have so many specialized fields that has gotten to the point where certain fields can't even communicate with each other. So you almost need like individuals that can talk in both worlds, so to speak. I don't know. That's just me kind of rambling.
Well, when you were mapping out the visualization of the network, it mapped onto probably from well the game Pirates really back on the NES, but like the different networks being the different cities. Like you said, like for they all for a hub to hold together, there has to be a core support belief there, and that maps to a geography. Like this is the city on that island of
Mhm.
belief, and then the ships go between are the
Mhm.
are in the communication between the network.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Because me and Mel were talking also about the system of a ship, right? Like a ship is kind of like a system, and it's fairly self-contained. But whenever it goes into port, it has an exchange of goods or what supplies or whatever. So that kind of maps in the sense of what you were saying.
Yeah, that's like a biological like it's not hard for me, especially after BSG, to see ships as living entities. Even more so Farscape, I suppose. But like it's a function of it. It pulls into port, changes out its seamen, pulls back, goes back out and does its ship things. Yeah, and I like ships because the relationships maps.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
like your relationship with someone can also be something that goes out to port.
Hmm.
So it's I think because the at least with the expansion of our species across the globe, um, the like the those metaphors are useful in almost every layer because it's impacted our lives that deeply.
That's profound. Yeah, that's really good. Hmm. So I was kind of proposing to Manuel that I thought the systems were emergent, that there were a series of interconnected networks, right? And that I didn't know if there was an overarching system, but in a sense, like the Peterson camps and stuff, like view things as fairly hierarchical. And then, some people want things to be more collective and more kind of like collective distribution or whatever. And I was trying to think, like, do things have to be hierarchical? Are there different types of structures for networks?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could find explicit courses in various network architectures.
Mm,
Um, I think we like this like even though they're spontaneous and naturally occurring, like there's gonna be so many different forms that pop up,
hmm
and I think a lot of those have been mapped already.
hmm
Are you trying to invent one or see what's there?
I was just kind of understanding the original question. If I bring it back to the original question, it started with a friend of mine who's like very disturbed about the injustice of society, and she's like, "Man, the system's broken. We need to change the system, right?" And then I was thinking, and then I mentioned to Emmanuel, like, I said, well, like in a sense, like you need in order to have agency, you need some kind of structure. Like you need walls, you need like a roof, you need a base or a foundation in order to function within the world. So you need almost like, and even if you try to like destroy the system or create or replace it with a new system, you're going to come up with a new emergent system, right? And we mentioned like, let's say someone doesn't like the system, so they engage in unlawful activity, but they're going to eventually form systems as well, right? Systems of hierarchy, systems of command, et cetera, et cetera. And
Mm. So your
yeah,
friend said the system doesn't work.
yeah, she says
I
the
don't know
system
if that's
doesn't work.
true.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like I wouldn't take it and run with it. I would say the system isn't working, maybe, and then start with why. And I don't get much further past like people treat jury duty like it's the plague. They don't want to participate in a system, and a system that doesn't get human attention gets abused and corrupted. And if we went to our city council meetings and held the people who are supposed to represent us to their tasks, then maybe the system would be great. But so, or maybe it's broken. It could be a lot of things. But I wouldn't assume that it is broken is the correct first assessment.
Yeah, yeah. And I was wondering if it even could, like, is there even such a, like, because there's always going to be different components, right? Can you have a system crash?
Oh, they've crashed. Like a good example of a system crashing is that picture they have from World War II with people toting wheelbarrows of cash
Yeah.
because the inflation has gotten so bad it's worthless. Um, that's a system crash. Custer's Last Stand was probably I mean, there's all sorts. Yeah, absolutely, there's crashes. Um, but maybe it's where the system level at cosmology comes into play.
Mm.
It's like, are you a chicken born on a chicken farm? Or uh like for example, we live in a world where these famous Wachowski people inserted into the public collective this thing called the Matrix Slim, which made everybody question their own reality on some level. Um, and then they go on to make another one called about how some girl in Brooklyn or whatever was scrubbing toilets turns out to be the reincarnation of some queen of the galaxy. And
Right.
this planet is one among many where they take all the life energy and put it into a bottle to keep themselves young. So we could just be fruit for some alien somewhere. At that level, there's I think the problem is the compartmentalized knowledge, like the specialization you were talking about,
Mhm.
is necessary. Um, or it's inevitable and therefore something that should be accounted for.
You know, I was
Like,
thinking of that. Sorry.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I was thinking of that movie, and I found it really interesting that in order for her to get the license to be like Queen of Earth, she had to go to this massive bureaucracy, right, of the universe for the planet. You know.
You could that maps also to the one in Hitchhikers, um, where they have to take Zooey and get something validated. And I think that's the role AI is going to end up integrating into society as. It's because since like we don't read our terms of service, but there's no reason we don't have an AI that reads the terms of service and tells us things we'd object to because it knows us that well. It's like, this one's got that part where they get a kernel access to your computer. You know that game Blizzard just dropped? It all but so I think but it's like there's not a whole lot of motive for that to happen because there's so much money to be made in it not happening. The fact that the middleman thing, there's a lot of profit to be made there. So, but I think that's where it's gonna go.
Hmm.
Is the is an interface with the bureaucracy, the system, and because the complexity of the system is already way beyond a large percentage of the population.
Hmm. Yeah, and we were
And
talking. Sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Me and Manuel are talking about how you need like specialization in different levels in the system too, right? Like some people want a collective system, right, where everyone's equal and stuff, but you need people with different skill sets, right?
Well, where everyone's equal is the bottom.
Uh,
That's the only place everyone is equal. Like, there's this great story they made us read called Harrison Bergeron,
mhm.
where like the smart people had to wear headsets that like shot like interruptions into their thought patterns so that everybody felt the same level of smart. You know, it's there's scary angles if you from what sounds good, like if everyone's equal. Um I think it's the sentiment is like every soul is of the same value.
Mm-hmm.
And since the society insists that's not a thing, it's trying to latch on to other things that in place of the soul to base that on, and those are all hollow and flawed and lead to disaster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that was one of the big Jesus moves, is because it introduces the notion that that guy you're beating the crap out of might be God, and you might be in big trouble on the other side. Like the potential that anybody could be the divine, or the notion that we all contain our image bearers of the divine and deserve that is the revolution that brought our society to the place of all souls are equal.
Yeah, that's really good. Really profound. Huh. Yeah, I was thinking of that system too, right? Like, have you ever seen this series or read the book, The Foundation series by Isaac Asimov? It's also now on.
No, not Isaac.
So, anyways, this guy predicts that that there's going to be a dark age for civilization, right? The network's going to crash, but he can reduce the time of the dark age by creating a foundation at the other end of the universe to preserve all the knowledge, right? And shorten it. So this knowledge, the foundation has all the scientists and stuff in it. And throughout the history, it faces numerous crises and kind of preserves the knowledge to try to bring the thing back. But at the end of the series, you discover that there's another foundation, which is of psychology and not of science or of like way. So I was thinking of like the word psychic comes to mind. Now, like psychic can be woo, but like psyche, it's really psyche, and ick is pertaining to the psyche. Now, I don't know. That was kind of an abstract move that I made there. I don't know how that relates. Maybe you could kind
East
of.
and West.
Uh,
Like the but I mean I haven't read the story, but the first foundation representing the Western thought, and the second foundation representing the Eastern thought. And then it goes to like, okay, it's fine, we built the machines to do this stuff. How is it that like the people pursuing the Eastern path don't have literal telepathy? Yeah. Why isn't that panned out? Um, but then there's like I can tell almost when the cat is in the shed and wants in.
hmm.
So there's so much going on that's not accounted for because the Western line of thought can only see the things that are repeatable. Like one of instances in the universe can never be proven.
Hmm.
They need for it to be real, they need to be able to repeat it.
And I think of like so like Vervaeke talks about the Christian thing of things being a narrative, almost like a line. And he talks about the continuous cosmos. And I can't remember what the other one was. But anyways, one is kind of like a series of cycles repeating and stuff like that. And I was thinking of that because like I guess when I think of the system crash, I'm scared in the sense of revolution or whatever and how those things go and how things cycle over time. So in a sense, but I'm also scared of the narrative that we're progressing towards one final outcome, like the apocalypse and then utopia, right? So there's like
Mm.
those two views, and one is kind of Eastern, one is kind of Western, right? And I think we're having like a clash of views, and somehow I think that the thing that I've been interested in lately is the synthesis of the East and the West, right? So, and I find it also interesting too, and we're kind of diverging from the network thing, but it's really interesting that you mentioned that the East, like that idea of the foundation being the East and the West, right? Um, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought. Maybe you could rescue me.
Well, I'll take up you say fear a lot.
Hmm. Yeah,
What
that's true.
and so that calls into question for me, what's your cosmology system view?
Uh,
Because we exist in an unknown, in an unknowable unknown. But I think for us to exist in the unknowable unknown, we have to at least have some, I don't know, space for what this could be. Like, like death is a thing,
Hmm.
and before you were born is a thing. Like as far as we can tell, time is a thing, and therefore there's before you were here and after you were here, and what's up with you, this awareness experiencing thing. What's that system? What's going on there?
Hmm.
And I and I think if fear is too big of a thing, then remembering that it's all of that's going to go away at some point. I mean, you know how it ends for you.
Yes.
So, so what's really to be scared of other than not being the most you can while you're here?
Yeah, that was great. That was wonderful, Chris. I love that. Yeah. And I have different,
It's just the Bible's that like be not afraid so much, and then the fear is the mind killer.
yeah, fear is the mind killer. I shall not fear. I was thinking of that actually before I got on this call. There's some,
Over and through me, and
yeah.
I shall remain. Right. So what is that?
Mm.
That's what's the I that remains? Who are what? Okay, and how does what? I mean, what? I think we all have a default view on that. That like the I that remains, the soul. That like I don't think we question our own whatever of that often enough. Like, what is the I?
You know, it's interesting. I got to a point in my meditation where I realized that I wasn't my thoughts. And then I started to think, what was that thing in me, right? And how my consciousness and where did my consciousness end? I am conscious, I think of myself as my body, but my consciousness expands to whatever I can hear or see or whatever. And thinking of my consciousness as a mirror of what exists. And then it got pretty deep and I became kind of frightened of that place in a sense.
Of the place?
Mhm.
You realized the place and then became frightened of it. What is this realize? This is interesting, right? When something is realized.
Ah, yeah.
You're in a meditation and there's a realization. Is it like is that what we would consider like a shift or a permanent shift in a salience landscape?
That's interesting. Yeah, in a sense, it was kind of like um an experience of something greater, and then kind of like suddenly go, whoa, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm not ready.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there anything we should touch on before we wrap it up, Griz? What do you think?
Hmm. I think find the others
What's
and
that?
you're doing. I think find the others and you're doing great.
Yeah. Uh, I
Like,
want to,
share, and subscribe.
yes.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, I don't know. Lots of things have been going on for me, but yeah, this notion of the system and stuff is something that I'm really interested. I guess I'm interested in network theory, is why I was also interested in the system, right? And I wanted to know because so many people want to like go against this. Where I live, there's a lot of people that feel the system's broken and they want to go against it. But thinking of it like, hmm, thinking of working within the system to affirm the positive, I guess that's kind of what I like. You when you were talking, I something that, like Manuel, my ears, and he talked about affirming the good, affirming the positive. So